This is Kevin Van Huntin Rick, and you're listening to WithoutYourHead.com. And if you lift the lid of the basket, you die.
Welcome back to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm still Nasty Neil.
And I remain Terrible Troy.
Mm-hmm. And we're joined by Sean Oliver of Kayfabe Commentaries, if you're a wrestling fan, and author of Sophies Journal, which I read last night, and I really enjoyed.
Well, if you can get it all in one night, it's either a really, really good thing or a really, really bad thing, isn't it?
I don't know. I think if it's really bad, it would be hard to finish in one night. But honestly, not just because you're here. I was reading it. I really got hooked on it, and I flew right through it.
Well, good. That's good to hear. That's a good way to start off an interview on a new program. How many of folks are crossing over with us right now, Mr. Neil? How many people are...
Like from I'm not really sure. I have to wait till after it's over to know. But I think there's a lot.
What do you do? Yeah, in general, how much of your audience is a shared audience?
That's a good question, because there are a lot of people that only listen to wrestling and only to have them both on one YouTube, and then people are like, I subscribe to this, and why is there wrestling stuff on here? I subscribe to this, and why is there horror stuff on here? So then I separated them. There's a crossover, but I think more horror fans like wrestling than wrestling fans like horror, I found.
Yeah. Well, I'll know 5 minutes into taking any phone calls, should you get any, because two or three of the drunks that you usually get on the other deal there, I'll be able to identify rather quickly.
Right. Yes, exactly. So where did the idea come from for Sophie's Journal?
Oh, Jesus. I put out a book last year. It was a nonfiction book. It was a book about my exploits in that other business of professional wrestling and running that company for 10 years, and it did really well. But my secret desire to write fiction, I mean, I'd written screenplays. I'd been in the film and television industry for so long, but I'd never written a novel. So my secret desire to do that was there, and kind of started to bubble to the surface while I was writing Kayfabe, the nonfiction book. And I thought that since I had kind of a built-in audience there already with Kayfabe, that it would be an easy entree to the fiction world. Having something published at least would be easier to get things seen and accepted and read, even if fiction. Boy, was I wrong. But about halfway through it, I said that I want my next book, even if I don't do another fiction item again, I want to be a storyteller, like I was. And so I decided I would do that. And Sophie's Journal was I have to say, was the second or third idea that I sat down and began to bang out an outline for. But it was the one that left the gate and didn't stop running. I always say when you're an artist or a creative of any kind, you tend to be very easily dissatisfied with one of the things you're working on, and maybe you'll just throw up another easel one day and slap some paint on that one and say, I don't want to screw it. I don't want to work in blacks anymore. Let's throw this up here and get some color. And then eventually there's the one thing that hits the easel and you don't stop. And that's what Sophie's Journal was. It was the one that I probably began in earnest in January, and then, just had come out last month.
Are there any of because I don't see any of the characters like that I would think have a connection to you, but are any of the characters, any of the themes like something personal to you?
Well, you know what? I don't know how you write, if you're going to write honestly and not draw from your life and your past or they're amalgamations of people that you know. So you draw from that. And so naturally, and really without deliberate intent, you start to, as you're writing somebody, go, oh, okay, yeah, I know. Their dialogue begins to write itself because it is an echo of something or someone. It's very much unconscious. You know, Stephen King had the best summation of what writing fiction is, a writing story of any kind, for screen or a novel. You're really just dusting off a fossil. The story's there, and just allow yourself to follow it. Don't try to manipulate anything. Don't create anything. If there's something solid that you're working on, you're really just dusting it off, and it's revealing itself as you're going along. And more so for him, because he doesn't do any kind of plotting or outlining. He just sits down with an idea and, does 11,000 pages. But folks like us who maybe aren't as gifted or insane, we need to construct a good skeleton. But you're still dusting off when you're putting the skeleton, because you're seeing where things go. Yeah, ideas come to you here, and you're solving problems. You're always solving problems. Oh, Christ, how am I going to get out of this one? How's she going to get out of this one? How are they going to find this? And generally, your first idea isn't the one you'll end up going with, because you'll be driving a car on some random Thursday at 8 in the morning and go, of course, she finds the discarded condom, whatever. Wanted to wake your audience up.
Yeah. Well, oddly enough that you said, not to manipulate, we were that kind of happens in the book, is Kathy tries to manipulate what's going on. I don't want to give too much away. And then it really goes in a different direction. I had never really saw that in that type of story before. It was kind of tried to manipulate for her own good, which I liked.
Well, if we were put in a situation like our protagonist in Sophie's Journal, young teacher with an anxiety disorder in a challenged area and school district, who gets a student who she comes to learn, whose journal entries will manifest themselves in her life in some form. Now, if we were in that position, is there anybody in this virtual room right now that wouldn't at some point go, well, if I prompted them to write an essay today about a really nice teacher who wins the lottery, what might happen? I think we'd all go there, wouldn't we? Just so happens that the issues that Kathy's dealing with are far more significant than the trivial example that I've conjured up just now. Mm-hmm. So she does try to steer this naturally occurring process, and we all know as fans of horror, you can't do that.
Yeah, bad things usually happen then.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it's kind of a twist on the classic kind of, genie or any kind of story where someone has a wish, but, in a different way.
Monkey paw kind of deal.
Exactly, monkey paw, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I was going to put a younger brother of Sophie's named Belial in the book, but I decided against it. I thought it might be too reminiscent of something out there. I don't know. It was a vague echo in my head of something I may have seen, so I decided against it.
Uh-huh. I mean, hey, she could have had a removed twin if it was Belial.
Well, exactly. See, that I try to get a basket case reference in every time I speak to you on your other show. It's grossly out of place after talking about Tony Atlas for 5 minutes to have a Belial. But here, it's suddenly at home. Hey, listen, how you feeling about this new Halloween?
I actually think the trailer looks really good. A lot of people are against it. But I thought I know it's in a way it's very similar to H2O, which skipped all the sequels. This kind of in a way H40, H40 skipped all the sequels. But that being said, I watched the trailer and I was interested in it.
I liked the ambience of the trailer. I think they were trying to make it feel like we felt when we saw the first one, but. It's so I just want to get it straight. So it's a sequel, but it's called just Halloween, like the first.
Right.
It's supplanting the real sequel that was there before, Halloween 2. So that doesn't exist. So it's a sequel that's called the original, which ignores the other sequel and everything after it. Am I good?
Exactly. It's a direct sequel to the first movie.
That sums it
up. Yeah, there are references though. If you watch a trailer closely, there's They had the 3 masks from Halloween 3. There's little things that kind of, I guess, just for Halloween fans, you can just see in the background.
Yeah, I'm just exhausted from all the rules of watching this thing, what I have to remember and what I have to discard.
Yeah.
I may go see it, or if I'm tired, I couldn't.
Yeah, I always, like, when I was a kid, when a new movie would come out in a franchise, like, you could just go and watch them all in order, and they would make sense. But now, like, if you were a kid now, and, like, you saw a movie, and like, hey, I'm going to go watch all these, they would make no sense. Like, you'd watch Halloween, and they'd make sense up to a point, and then they reboot it, and then a sequel, then a remake, and then, you know, it's all over the same thing with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre would be even worse.
Yeah, you can't just go and watch any of these. Maybe like Saw, but that's pretty new. Or Phantasm, I guess.
You could throw the discs up in the air in whichever order they land in on your floor. You could put in and have the same experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about Basket Case? Since you do bring up Basket Case a lot, I've always been a huge fan of Basket Case. What is it about it that you like so much?
Well, that's interesting. I think the fact that it plays as camp now, I guess, but I'm not so sure it was intended to be camp at the time. No one can deny the ample chest also on the female lead, revealed at the end of the film, while Belial is, I guess, porking her. Am I in the ballpark here?
I believe so. Yeah.
If you could imagine, for those of you who haven't seen it, what a partially formed, amputated lump of living flesh would look like on top of a rather Rubenesque young woman. You can catch that in Basket Case right at the end of the film. I don't know all of it, the bizarre music, and, you know, it's shot on clearly like 16 millimeter film. I wonder if it was even 35. Really, that had those really hot lights, for the film stock. I'm, film school geek, so I'm talking about things that are probably ridiculous to the average listener, but it produces that kind of visual quality, and God, I mean, it's. Did you get the platinum edition where they went back to all the locations?
It's pretty amazing, and there's something. I always think there's something about all those movies from like from the 70s and early 80s, and when New York was still sleazy, big or small, from Basket Case to Taxi Driver and Chud, and all those have like a really special feel to them. They're very gritty, and there's something like magical there.
Well, now, was Chud shot in New York, or was it like Vancouver for New York?
No, Chud was actually shot in New York. They even went like in some like tunnels and stuff to do some of the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah, they put out a special Arrow edition of it with all kinds of specials recently.
Excellent.
I think Chud's
right on my birthday list.
Yeah, Chud. I'm a fan of Chud. It's a very underrated movie, but Basket Case though was fantastic. And the guy from Basket Case, Kevin Van Huntin Rick, he's a stone carver now.
You're damn right he is.
And I actually carved Belial while he was teaching me how to carve stone.
That's tremendous in itself.
Yeah, he's sitting out in my flower bed right now. It's on a little stone. So it's not the greatest.
Not Kevin Van Henrik.
No.
Okay.
No. It's funny because no one knows him as like this guy from this crazy movie. They just know him as like the local mason who carves stone. But yeah.
Listen to this entertainment we're producing tonight, Neil. Do your listeners, would they believe that I was voted one of the what award did you give me from that other show? Or was I voted
from it was we were voting for a Hall of Fame. So you were like in the top 5, I believe, Hall of Fame guests of all time on In Your Head.
Oh, very nice.
No one would believe that right now as we talk about Belial and carving stone with Kevin Van Hankenschmidt.
I don't know. People, it seems like he comes up a lot. Like a lot of directors talk about, like current directors. I think the last 2 weeks, like that was a movie they grew up watching, and it was like a big inspiration to them. Was Basket Case. Yeah.
Right. Was that The Godfather or Basket Case? What did you do?
So I do think Sophie's Journal, at the beginning, you have I think you capture kind of like even when you're older, the feel like you have about going back to high school and the stress of that and everything. And then as it goes on, I think it's got more of like a Twilight Zone feel to the story.
Well, that's a compliment.
Definitely.
Because they were so well constructed. The beginning of the book, teachers that have read it have said to me that they knew the beginning already. They get the stresses of the profession, and especially in an urban area, and just the madness of that job. But I think it was important to construct that world, a kind of, a career and a location sometimes without friends, even for the adults, and it being a source of stress for someone who's already got, the main character, Kathy, who's already struggling with this anxiety disorder. So had to take some time constructing that world and establishing what it feels like to be alone at sea in those urban schools that are, political pawns, and really, until they address the socioeconomic issues of those areas, teachers are just the ones that agree to come out and take the blame for everything that's wrong. We're a failing school. It's my job that I'm not doing well. That's the problem here. I have half my class that goes to sleep at 1 a.m. because they don't know where their parents are. But it's that new math program that I'm just not teaching the right way. That's the problem. So, but they make that. The teachers make that in real life. They make that deal that they'll be the bullet. They'll take the bullet and be the cannon fodder if they could, because they know there's a chance they might be able to just reach a student, that kid that's got, that needs that person, that adult that needs to understand what it feels like to be loved unconditionally. The hope that they'll nail that one or two kids a year. They deal with all that other stuff. So that brings with it a real, a serious dose of anxiety and stress. And then you've got someone who's got a condition like Kathy does, and it just gets amplified. So I had to spend a lot of time constructing that. And the Twilight Zone thing is interesting to consider. For genre, it's been classified as psychological thriller. And I guess that's the best way to it's a touch of supernatural. You wouldn't call it sci-fi. You wouldn't call it horror, really, right? Would you?
No. Yeah, I'm someone who doesn't get too tied up in genre, because people argue like is alien sci-fi or horror. Right. I don't think it really makes a difference. It doesn't make the movie better or worse. So, but I don't know where I would fit it in. Like I said, I do kind of get a little sci-fi from it for me, but I could see why some people wouldn't. We do have a caller here, 412 area code, and he's been very patient. Or here or her, I'm not sure. Who are you?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Who are you? Hey.
Oh, this is Chris.
Chris,
how you doing?
Oh, cool. Chris, do you have a question for Sean?
Yeah, Sean, I always wanted to ask you, buddy. I've listened to every one of your interviews. I bought your book. Really enjoyed it. I hope you don't think this is a morbid question. Which of any of the wrestlers that have passed away would you want to interview the most? And which one of your shows do you think that they would fit best in?
I could to tie it into this show, which is Without Your Head, clearly an in your head question. We wanted to do a show where it's me sitting alone at the Ouija board, and I would interview whatever dead wrestler showed up on the board. And once they identified themselves, we would flip to that page of the binder, and I could begin to ask my questions to said dead wrestler. That I'm not kidding. That we talked about the possibility of doing this.
What's odd is I had this idea for In Your Head to do it as on the podcast, and we did do an episode where we talked to Abe Lincoln. via Medium, but I just asked him all wrestling questions since he was, supposedly NWA champion.
Yeah, we decided that we would have actually needed a person there to channel the, and while while the Long Island Medium could probably bullshit everyone that she was channeling Abe Lincoln, it would be really tough for the average 65-year-old female to answer the Roddy Piper questions accurately.
Sure,
we decided to not go that direction. But to answer my friend's question there, I think that we had a big lost opportunity when Dusty Rhodes passed away. We produce a series called Guest Booker, and what that does is it covers the decision makers in wrestling, the writers of wrestling, right? The people who made all the decisions that we watched on TV. And Dusty Rhodes was one of the most celebrated and controversial bookers of his time, and to not have him on a series that purports to profile the most creative minds in that business was really a lost opportunity to not have him on there. So that I'm going to go with Dusty Rhodes.
It's a good choice, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Have you ever tried to reach out to Pat Patterson or the Hebners?
Patterson, funny Patterson story. Patterson was one of the first ones I wanted on that series, so I began to send, no jokes please, I began to send fruit baskets to his house, Harry and David fruit baskets, with copies of the Guest Booker DVDs, just kind of saying, when we come calling, we want you to do this. And when I finally had the opportunity to talk to him, it wasn't long ago actually, I had him in a conference room, and I explained the concept of the show and actually the Timeline series as well. And he had he had his book coming out, so he couldn't do anything because of the book. It's the most common excuse I get when trying to book guests for any of our series, the book. And he had the book coming out and said he would consider it after that. But the book is out, and I think he did a shoot interview recently, so maybe he's fair game now. I would love to have Pat on, so I will pursue that.
I think the Hebners would be interesting too, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I would have to resist the temptation to spend an inordinate amount of time on Montreal because so many other people have talked to them about the screw job. And actually, with Dave or Earl, who was the one in the ring at the time? Earl, right?
I think it was Earl. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just the fact that they'd been there so long, I think, would be interesting too. If they would be forthcoming, that's the other thing too. Who's the best guest? It's not always the person you think of. It's not always the biggest name. Mm-hmm. There's entertainment value that you've got to consider. People have to be good storytellers to be on those shows and entertain our audience, but also they've got to be willing to open up a little. And it doesn't mean crap on your friends, like so many people tend to criticize these shoot interviews as being, sludge fests. But it just requires a degree of honesty, even honesty about one's self.
And one last guy, I'm sorry. What about Nails? Did you ever reach out to Nails? I'm dying to know his side of the story.
You know what? It would be a good 20-minute show. I don't know that it would be a good 2-hour show.
You don't think?
Well, I don't know. What did I talk to him about after him and the McMahon incident behind closed doors?
His match with Sting when he was the convict.
Okay, so it would be a 22-minute show.
Great.
All right. Well, it's great talking to you, Sean. Thank you so much.
Right,
Thanks, Chris. When you're talking about the teachers, was that something you knew about and was interested in before you wrote the book, or was it something you looked into while you were writing it?
It was the setting for that story. It was just organic. But since then, though, I've considered the fact that you've got authors that have kind of staked their claim of certain genres, right? You've got the legal thriller, which Grisham has, and I think Robin Cook does the medical thriller. Nobody does the educational thriller, though, do they?
No, not that I can think of, yeah.
it could be your niche.
Scary. Schools are scary.
Yeah. I think when you have that stuff, when you have real social issues in it, and then yet it is, I don't want to say fantasy, whatever. It's a genre thing. It makes all that more believable. It kind of grounds the story since there's a lot of realism in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this particular tale, the only thing that you'd raise your eyebrows at is the fact that this notebook, has control of an adult's life. Everything else in the story, from Kathy's family situation and her struggles with her childhood, to the situations in schools, the terrible conditions that some of these children live in, and are forced to navigate the neighborhoods they have to navigate just walking home. All of that is very real.
When you said earlier, you've written scripts. Was this ever one that you wanted to do as a script? Why was it this particular story you picked to write the novel for?
No, this one came as quickly as I decided to write. This wasn't one that had been hanging around for. I think it would translate to film very well. I was I don't know if I was aware of that. I was always aware that it could. I don't think I was making decisions so that it would. But I guess because of my background in film, it's just naturally told in that way, where it is somewhat filmic, I think.
Who reads the audiobook?
I'm doing it right now. Jesus.
Okay.
I vowed after the first one, Jackie, that I but you know what? It had been 6 months, and I forgot. I forgot that I vowed I'd never do it again. But but here I sit, almost done. It should be out in a week or so. Audible.com, and then iTunes and wherever else they distribute.
Yeah. What's the difference between reading nonfiction and fiction?
Well, the other one was me telling you the story mostly. So it was just kind of a very conversational me. And I did get to do some wonderful, spot on, if I might say so myself, impressions of some of the wrestlers and people. But here, I mean, think about it. If you're reading a scene with 3 or 4 characters in it, fictional characters having a conversation, I'm schizophrenic by the end of the session.
So do you do female voices? Because when I've heard audiobooks, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. Yeah.
I went up to my wife right after I finished the book, and I said, "Well, get ready for the worst 8 hours of your life." But then you know what? Here's what I decided. When the book is written by a woman, people tend to want to feel like the author's talking to them. So I think it's most often done exclusively by a woman when there's a female author. Now, I've heard audiobooks. I'm listening to a James Patterson one right now where they use different actors. So when it's a male point of view, Dennis Quaid is actually doing those, and then when it's a female point of view, they have a female actress doing that, which I don't think is necessary. I soften my voice a little, but I don't want it to be shticky, so I'm not going into my falsetto register to do that. I just soften my voice a little, so it's still me telling you the story.
How long does it take to do an audiobook?
The recording isn't the problem. It's all of the editing. It's the extensive editing and processing, too. Audible is, and rightly so, very, very stringent about their audio guidelines, the noise floors and the amplification levels, and it's very, very specific and very technical. So the raw track, after you speak into the mic for a few hours, that's really just the starting point. It's got to get put through some compression, some gates, and making sure that there's no peaks. And we tend to like I just did. And so anything that's an imperfection at all, from your lips smacking to flubbing lines, obviously that's the most obvious edit, but there's so many tiny edits that people don't realize. Our lips make noise, and our our noses make noise when we breathe. So you got to get rid of the breaths. You got to get rid of the pops, the tings, the zips, the zaps. So I mean, that's the lion's share of it. It's really dozens of hours. It's a lot of work between the recording and all the editing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I had to edit a Dieter Laser interview once, whose his native language is German, and he asked me to edit all of, like, anytime he mumbled or, didn't know a word, and it was like an hour and a half interview, and it was very tedious to do. So I can't imagine doing the whole audiobook.
Yeah, but I didn't want to not do an audiobook. I have so little time to actually physically read anymore, and I love books and I love the tactile nature of a book, but just for time's sake, I have to plow through stuff, and I do it on audiobooks. It's just a real important, a very necessary evil in this day and age. And,
I enjoy them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to read without them, so I do as well. So it was important to me to get one out for Kayfabe, and I have to tell you that the audiobook gets probably more accolades and attention than the print or the Kindle, and I think it's probably outsold both, and it sold very well. But I think the audiobook is still going strong. What are we, 7 months out? Came out around Thanksgiving. And that audiobook still, I mean, would be 7 months down at 10 copies a day are being downloaded from iTunes or Audible. So people love audiobooks.
President Clinton wants to know, Sean, is a service like Kindle Unlimited a boon or a bane to a new author?
Well, anything. For me, in this new genre, crossing over to fiction, anything that gets my book in front of someone's eyes is wonderful. The Kindle version is $2.99. I made sure that they priced it there, and I just want people to be able to pick it up. I'll probably just about break even between the advertising and all the other stuff. At this point, I just need to be operating in that marketplace, in the thriller fiction genre, and I just want people to read it and give it a chance. So I think Kindle Unlimited, which, if anybody doesn't know, it's a subscription service, not unlike Netflix, but for books, where you pay a monthly fee and you have a host of book, thousands and thousands of books at your disposal to read throughout the month. So if you're a voracious reader, something like this would be something you'd be interested in. And yeah, I guess you make a little less than a typical download or a book purchase, but the author is still paid per page read. So they're tracking on KU how many digital pages are being read, and the author is paid by the page.
So, how did you get into writing scripts and working on movies?
I'd always wanted to do it. I'd always wanted to be on the creative end. I mean, I acted as well, but I was first fascinated by filmmaking, and knew very early on that that's what I wanted to do. And then somehow it became like the most popular goddamn thing to do. Somewhere, when I was 5, I was 1978, and I wanted to be a filmmaker, right? But then by the time I got to college and I could actually study it, every dickwad in the world was in school with me there, talking about Kevin Smith and Clerks and the New Revolution, the independent film. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So it was both the greatest thing and the worst thing, because it gave, like, digital editing, when that all came out while I was in college, I think right after I left college. And so everybody was making indie films. People were making feature films in film school next to me. So it was great that it democratized an industry that had huge gatekeepers, But the flip side of it was, like, you had morons producing stuff. So you had to sift through a lot of crap to get to the real nuggets of gold. So I always wanted to do it, but then I also started acting too. So that kind of steered me off into that way, in that direction, wanting to be in front of the camera. I was directing television commercials in the late 90s. Did a handful of national commercials for discount brokerage, stock house, and a stock trading house. And after a year or so of that, I was like, I don't want to be answerable to anybody in a creative capacity anymore. I just want to go back to acting. I just want to focus on that, the performance end of it. Just the things people would quibble about. I mean, there was a shot. This is an actual story. I stood in a room and had a 30-minute discussion with people that were allegedly educated, that the butler in the shot, it took place in a mansion. It was actually the mansion from the movie Annie in the 80s. I don't know if you ever saw it, but Warbucks Mansion. It was shot at Monmouth College in New Jersey. Their great hall is actually what they use for the mansion. So we're shooting the commercial in there, and we have a butler take a few steps down the steps, holding a tray, and he's just a couple of steps down the step, and they mention the butler. The butler will be serving whatever today. I watched a room full of people that I was in have a 30-minute discussion whether he should take 2 steps down or 3 steps down in the 30-second edit of the commercial. It was of such little significance to me, the director. It was of such little significance to me. And I watched people fight, grown people fight. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. It's gone. It's gone. And any ounce of joy I had while my camera rolled on that wonderful bald-headed butler man is gone, because we're now fighting over things that are just ridiculous. Another chooch from the actual firm. We did another commercial for a stock house where it had some sleek, sexy car in the 90s. Maybe it was a Maserati or something, zooming around a country road. And we're talking about, this is when the internet trading first came out. We're talking about that you have total control, and you can go fast, slow, whatever we were implying. And it slams its brakes on right at the end of the commercial. So the final shot is the nose of this thing, coming right up against a wooden gate, an inch from it. And, implication being you do as much as you want, you're in total control. So some chooch is standing there. We show it. It's the 7th cut of it. We think it's great. People are feeling good. And this guy wanders in from his trading desk. I don't know why he had decision-making power. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he upset the apple cart when he said, "Why does the car stop?" And I said, well, because all cars stop eventually. And that one just did, because it's the end of the commercial, and there's the logo. He goes, "But we never stop." And I said, right. But the trader at home has total control. So as I'm trying to supply logical reasoning to this, he's screaming, "We never stop. We never stop trading." I'm done. I'm done with this.
Oh, by the way, I like your pictures on your IMDb page.
What's on there?
It's like these black and white photos. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yes, far much thinner. Those were the guiding light photos. Obviously, the soap opera years photos right there. I was probably 30 when they shot in black. They don't even do headshots in black and white anymore. They're all color.
Well, I like them. So how can people get Sophie's Journal?
You can get Sophie's Journal at Amazon.com. You can get it on your Kindle. You can get a paperback of it. You can get in about a week, I'm thinking. They take a long time. Let's say 2 weeks. If you're an Audible subscriber, it should show up on your Audible account. If not, you can go to Audible and buy it, or you can go to iTunes if you like to use the iBooks app and get it from Apple. It'll be out. Hey, before we go, I got to ask you, you guys would be the ones to ask, what's so special about, what's the new movie I wanted to ask you about? For God's sakes, what's wrong with my memory? I'm opening my notes on my phone. Hereditary.
Oh, well, I'll answer that one second. We do have a call here. 573 area code. Who are you?
Hello, this is Jacob from Springfield, Missouri. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks.
You have a question for Sean?
I do, actually. I just want to call and congratulate Sean on his new books. I happen to own both of them, and I happen to own the Kayfabe Commentary book on Audible, and I really enjoyed that book. I actually got a chance to purchase it from Audible last month, and I actually listened to it entirely twice, actually, and it's actually currently my favorite Audible book right now. So, Sean, really appreciate the read, and it was very entertaining. So,
it gets better as you listen to it more. So just throw it on again tonight to fall asleep. Keep the headphones on, and you'll wake up feeling like you own a professional wrestling production company and the Iron Sheik's on the phone in the morning while you haven't even opened your eyes yet yelling about something. You could have that sensory experience.
Exactly. Yeah, my favorite stories of the books was I actually loved the Terry Funk story at the end, and I got to tell you what. For as far as Terry Funk impressions go, like yours is right up there for the ones I've heard the best. So I really enjoyed that.
The Funk was your favorite impression?
Yeah. Or do you have one of your favorite impressions though?
The cornet comes very easily. So I always thought that the cornet was, because it's fun to do, because you can, to be Jim Cornette and to actually be Jim Cornette, you can walk around your house today. Jacob, you said your name was?
Yes.
You can walk around your house tonight, Jacob, and begin to cut a promo, wrestling parlance, for yell at something, anything for not working or not being in the right place, and that is probably an accurate depiction of what's happening tonight in Jim and Stacy's house in Kentucky. The next time you can't find the remote, just go, well, goddamn, the son of a bitch was here a minute ago. Well, I didn't get up in his dead legs and walk. Just do that, and you are 100% accurate.
Right. So Cornette's always a blast to listen to, and like I said, I'm really enjoying him more in the book. I did have one question. I saw on your Twitter that, first I'll go back to the book. You had a story about Colt Cabana, and I won't go into the whole details and won't spoil it for those who are interested in the book, but I saw on your Twitter that you had a chance to talk with Colt Cabana at the Legends of the Ring Fest. Was this table right across from you?
And Sean looked very thrilled to be there.
Yeah. It was, actually. Okay, so there's a story in the book that Colt Cabana, the popular wrestler, and I had an odd exchange which didn't work out for our company. And I told the story, and I guess I laid into him a bit in the book, but I felt justified because of the way it was handled. The one thing I had to decide very early on in writing this book, am I going to be honest? Am I going to tell every story regardless of what the ramifications are? And you have to have respect for your reader. I hate nothing more than I open a book and you can sense that the writer is really baby-facing events in their life. So I had to be very honest. The people that I respected, I told you why I respected, and I told you the entire story, like Bruno Sammartino. The people I had issues with, like Conan and Colt, I told you the whole story, and I laid it all out there. And you know what? I can say 100%, if anybody took issue with anything I wrote about them in the book, then they are angry with the person that's staring back at them in the mirror, because I told the truth, and I just told my take on what happened and how I felt. So anyone who wasn't happy with the behavior that was reported in the book, it was all true. So that's an issue for them and their shrink. I'm not listening to it. But Colt, I turn around. We're setting up before the convention. So I'm standing at the table, and I turn around, and Colt is next to me behind the table. And I said, well, hello. Haven't seen you in a while. And he said, hey, I just want to apologize to you. And he put out his hand, and I shook it. And he said, I should not have handled myself the way I did with your show. And life is too short to have heat with anybody. I don't want to stress. So I just want to tell you I'm sorry. And I said, you got some set of balls. I said that you are very big for coming over and doing that. I said, I just want to explain to you, it may not have seemed like a big deal for you to cancel that booking to us back then, but it was for us. And that's why it was significant enough for me to write about in the book. And that was it. We had a little 5-minute discussion about it. He headed off, And I said, actually, Anthony said, you may want to grab a picture for Twitter because no one's going to believe you. I said, all right. And we took a picture together, and I didn't even have to write anything about it. I just tweeted out me and Colt shaking hands, and that's what happened.
Well, like I said, well, that's good to happen, though. Like I said, life's too short, like you just said, to hold grudges. So I don't think Cornette got the memo on that, but...
Agreed.
Well, once again, Sean, like I said, really enjoy it. Like I said, I'm just now flipping through the pages of Sophies Journal right about now, so on my tablet. Really enjoying it so far. I haven't quite finished it yet. I'm hoping to finish it by later on this weekend. But like I said, I'm really enjoying what I'm reading so far.
Well, I appreciate it. Let Amazon know. As you know, we live in a world now where the only thing that matters are reviews from the general public. And good Lord, have you dealt with the general public recently? These people have the authority to make or break you as an artist, but they do. So when I hear someone who's enlightened and obviously intelligent like yourself, I tell you, get out there and be one of the general public for me, goddammit. Get on Amazon and be loud for my books.
Definitely will do. Well, thank you for your time, Sean, and I wish you the best, and looking forward to the next YouTube DVD.
Thanks so much.
Right,
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, take care.
So, Hereditary. I went to see it this week, and, I saw a lot of hype. People were saying it's like it would get your pulse. Like they took, they measured everyone's pulse at the movie, and it was like skyrocket. So I figured I wouldn't be scared of the movie, but watching, I couldn't figure out why really anyone would be scared of the movie. And I can't say it's bad. Like, I think it's well acted, but it's very dull, very boring, and it's kind of a Scooby-Doo ending. I don't know if you saw it. Like, they explain the whole movie in the last 2 minutes of the movie. The villain just goes, explains everything that's happened right at the end, like literally the last 2 minutes. And I was not impressed. I was not a fan of the movie, but I see people say it's this masterpiece and like our generation's Exorcist. And, I don't quite get it.
Yeah,
there was a piece in the New York Times last week about the new kind of horror film for our generation and how it's different from the horror films of old. And what they were positioning, this was one of the ones they used as they didn't go into too much detail about the plot, but they used it as kind of a profile for their point that today's horror film is first and foremost about interpersonal relationships and the horrors and difficulties therein, and then some traditional stuff sprinkled throughout. But the emphasis, first and foremost, is on family and people. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. I haven't seen the film, so I couldn't tell you if that made any sense. But the one person who did tell me they enjoyed it and recommended it, they said, just don't go in expecting a wall-to-wall horror film. He said, it's a family drama for everything but the last 20 minutes, and then it's a very David Lynchian horror film for the last 20 minutes. Accurate?
Yeah, I would say accurate. I think that stuff should have been spread out a little more throughout the movie, because it's not very... and I like a slow burn. I like, it's not like I have to have, nonstop stuff jumping at me, but I didn't find it interesting. And the last, 20 minutes or so is cool, and then the last 2 minutes, I don't even think it's cool. It's just someone just coming out and just, has dialogue explaining what you just saw, which I don't know. I think it's kind of cheap.
Oh, boy. Yeah. How about A Quiet Place? That's the other one I heard some stuff about.
I liked A Quiet Place quite a bit. I went to see it. That was an advanced screening, and that did a great job, like, building tension. There really is like almost silence, and then so when anything would like make a little bit of noise, like you were right there with the characters, like, oh shit, something's going to happen, don't make any noise. And the place was packed, and I thought, well, maybe this isn't going to be something that's going to like appeal to a mainstream audience, but everyone was definitely into it. And they even cheered at the end of the movie, which the end of the movie I thought was a little cheesy, but it worked with the crowd. They all started cheering. But it was definitely a movie I liked a lot.
So one recommendation and one don't go see, right? One thumbs up from you, Quiet Place. One thumbs down. Remember the Fangoria magazines? What was the guy that did the reviews in Fangoria? What was that?
Troy would probably know better than me.
I can't remember.
Is that Dr. Cyclops or something like that? His name
You might be right.
Yeah. Those last few pages, like before the ads at the end of the magazine. How great were Fangoria magazines? This is all gone, right? This is all gone. Everything from our childhood is gone.
Yeah, Fangoria just came back. But I don't think it has like the prominence like it did, when you were a kid. But yeah, they just made it come back.
Oh yeah, Fangoria and Famous Monsters. You couldn't wait to get to the end for the cool ads at the end.
And there were sources of information. Now, no magazine is going to deliver you any information because you're getting it in 5 seconds on the internet. So, but it was like photos from the set of Evil Dead 2. It was like, oh my God, they're doing another one, and I'm going to see 7 pictures from the set in this magazine.
Yeah, I remember.
The youngins today don't understand how special those things were.
Yeah, the photos of Martin and Salem's Lot really creeped me out as a kid. I still remember him, like the kid floating outside the window. I was like, holy shit.
I could right now really shit my pants. I could right now shit my pants just thinking about the kid outside the window.
Oh, yeah. That's the worst.
From my childhood, I'll give you the top 3. That, the Suspiria trailer with the turning head, the head turning slowly, and then it was a skeleton on the other side. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, so watching it today I might laugh at it. But I used to have to I was watching Charlie's Angels, and any time the bumper played and they were going to commercials, I'd have to throw the pillow over my head so I wouldn't see the Suspiria ad. And the last one was, we had something called Chiller Theater that was on Channel 11 over here in New York. And the promo for it was a hand, an animated hand that would come out of the sand. It was like in a desert. I'm sure if you search on YouTube right now, some lunatic has the 9-second, not trailer, the bumper, and it would say Chiller. It was Chiller Theater. They put on some movie like Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things on a Saturday afternoon, and the bumper, when they go to commercial, was an animated hand coming out of the desert. I have chills just thinking about it, and stealing the R from Chiller, and the hand had 6 fingers. I don't know why I couldn't deal with the hand.
What always got to me was Magic. It was just like it's only like 12 seconds long, the trailer, and it's Anthony Hopkins movie, and it's got the dummy sitting there, and he just tells the little thing. He's like something, and then you're dead. And that always.
I
really
remember you terrified of that one. You'd run out of the room when you were a kid on that.
Yeah. So you don't know Troy. Troy's actually my older brother. So and he. And we actually had it.
I want to do an interview with Troy. Get the deepest, darkest secrets.
Breaking kayfabe.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Mom didn't spend all the lottery money yet, guys, did she?
No,
Lock her into the bedroom. Keep that money safe, guys.
So, have you seen any recent horror movies that you are into?
Absolutely not. I have 2 children, 12 and 5. So it's either, preteen stuff that I cannot deal with, or it's animated here in the house. So when they go to sleep and it's, 11 o'clock at night, I'm in no mindset to put on something terrifying. There's stuff I want to see. I have it on the list. Even the new It I wanted to see.
I'd love to do it.
Yeah, it looked like it was done well. I was not a fan of that TV series that they did in the 90s, for God's sakes. You read the book and you're, I guess the wonderful thing about, now I guess I should talk about this because I'm a novelist now. The wonderful thing about it is that if you don't get too descriptive, if you get descriptive enough to allow an adept reader to paint the pictures themselves, everything's much scarier because you're going to paint it in the colors that scare you the most. And the whole premise of it, of course, was that. But reading about it, reading the book, created that in my the most off-putting, eerie feeling after reading that book. And then I'm watching John Ritter running around with some big furry spider. And it was very much not what was in my head. I was very offended by it. So I'm hoping that this is a little closer to how I felt when I read it.
Well, they don't get to that point yet because it's split into two parts.
I know. It's the early
first,
stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
But they do what I really like about the Pennywise in this one. And some people didn't like it, but I think it's because they didn't read the book. But it's much. You could tell it's like it's otherworldly. It's a creature. It's not a guy as a clown. And there's little things like eyes are going their different ways, and kind of the creature's kind of seeping out, but
you something
know from his hand
and stuff.
Yeah, still,
so
there's something not right.
It's not in any way anyone that was in the movie Clue.
Right, exactly.
It's not Tim Curry. All right. See if I can deal with that.
For the 1991, you almost would have been better if you didn't show anything, because, like you said, it is the whole idea of it was whatever's the scariest to that person. So right. I don't know it'd be better just not even to film what it was.
Right. Well,
because I don't think whatever you film,
executive, imagine going in the room.
I think whatever you filmed, it's going to be a letdown. But yeah, you can't just. Yeah, you're right.
You're the guy from The Player who's pitching the film to Tim Robbins. He's like, I don't even think this is an American film. We'll do it in black and white with no sound. It's a horror film, but we see nothing.
So were you always into horror movies, or are you just into movies in general?
Yeah, I mean, and then, you get into film school and you have to bury that in the backyard. You're like, okay, boy, is this the most trite shit in the world to these professors. Yes, let's talk more about Truffaut. Yes, I need to see Un Chien Andalou once again to try and dissect that 20-minute masterpiece. But yeah, I mean, as a kid, absolutely. Total freak, subscription to Fangoria. Tom Savini was just to the left of Jesus Christ.
Nice. Good man.
And yeah, so I was a total nut. And going to the video rental store and going back and finding those straight to videos, like Pieces, and I mean, they mightn't have been straight to video actually, but to me they were. Wouldn't see them in TV ads or anything like that, but all you had was the cover. They had a 5-inch by 8-inch slate of real estate to sell you on that film, and just how over the top some of them went. It was a wonderful experience going through the horror section as a kid, and getting home and putting that videotape in. Yeah, so I was a nut.
Yeah, I actually have Pieces right here next to me. The Arrow Blu-ray release. Nice. Great movie.
Yeah, that
Mutilator. So, what would you have picked as like the movie, your favorite horror movie? Your few favorite ones, I guess.
Well, when you say favorite, do we have to mean the best one, the one
most
that's well-crafted?
That's why I said favorite. Because if I said the best, I would say like you'd have to say Frankenstein or Psycho or something. But if your personal favorite, I think that's a better way. Whenever I review movies, that's how I do it.
Well, I think the answer to this question is going to be very much married to the person who's answering's age. And where, that impressionable, like 7, 8, when you wanted to have the shit scared out of you, but was affected by it. So for me, it's probably the first Halloween, because it was so accessible to us. It was on television, it was on HBO, and it was so simply done that just the little piano stings and the suspense was enough. I never, the gross out stuff never resonated with me. I always thought it was cool to see how they could cut off a head, or how do you get the blood to shoot out of this, or that's what maybe it looks like when a person dissolves in acid. It was cool from a special effects standpoint, but it never scared me in any test. The stuff that scared me was stuff like Halloween, stuff where you were afraid of what you didn't see, or just the tiny peak of what you could see. So more of that psychological, some of the Fulci stuff, not Fulci, Argento stuff, and that stuff, the creepy stuff, that stuff was always so very scary to me. What about you? What's your all-time favorite?
I really love Creepshow. It was the first VHS tape my mom bought me. I like the anthology, and I think all the stories are fun. So it's got kind of the combination of of like the cool creatures that are fun to me, but I like the short stories, and it's also very fun, and especially with the comic book backgrounds and stuff. So I always really like Creepshow.
I'll give you a segue. How about Maniac?
Oh, Maniac!
I love Maniac. And coming up here on With Aaron, I just booked him today. I talked to him, William Lustig, and I'm very excited. Not only do I love Maniac, but I think it's the all-time greatest poster ever. Because it's just so sleazy. It's an amazing. So you got the severed head, and it's turned on, towards him, and then you've got the prominent bulge in the pants. I was like, if I don't have any tattoos, but if I ever get a tattoo, I think it would be the poster for Maniac.
Will you do me a favor and ask a question for me of Mr. Lustig? Joe Spinell was in The Godfather,
Rocky.
Okay, so very, very respected, very top shelf films, big grossers at a time where movies could make a ton of money at the theater, award-winning films. How does he go psychologically, artistically? How does he make the transition and have it justified? And because his performance was fine in Maniac, but just having been put on that stage, like when he runs into Sly at a party in Hollywood, he says, "Hey, what have you been up to, Joe?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm doing this thing called Maniac. I'm going to cut a bitch's head off." And like, how does that happen?
Well, I will definitely ask him.
Like, how Joe was with all of that. Was he a producer or something too, I think?
Yeah, I think he's a producer on Maniac.
Yeah, okay, so clearly I guess he wanted to move into production, but I mean, it was just such a vast difference from where he could have gone.
Mm-hmm. I saw a video once where it said like he loved Maniac, and like after the movie he kept like his severed head like on his mantelpiece from the movie.
Yeah, that's an interesting biography I would read if it came out. I think the Joe Spinell. No one's written. Maybe that'll be my next damn book. I'm putting all these other books aside. I'm getting to work on the Joe Spinell story.
I would read that. I would definitely read that. Well, I hate to cut you off, Sean, but we have our other guests coming up, and I'm very anxious to talk to them as well. But it's been great talking to you.
Thank you very much, Troy. Nice to speak to you and to all your listeners. And be well. Stay scared.
Thank you very much. And we'll love to have you back sometime. You can just talk about horror movies if you want. He's like, no way, I'm getting out of here. All
right, this is Ed Gwynn from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the guy behind the Peterbilt wheel, and you're listening to Without Your Head.